Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to another special episode of the Impact Nations podcast. Today, we are joined by Jordan Moody one more time in the studio. We're doing this thing we call Story Time with Jordan. I'm enjoying it. And we're just sharing stories that couldn't make it into the catalog. We get so many stories every year that we're telling throughout the year, but sometimes we just don't have time or space to tell them all. And we just thought it'd be fun to share some of those stories here. So, Jordan, what do you want to tell us about today?
Well, today I'm really excited because we get to talk about our Afghan refugee program, which honestly, I feel like we don't get to talk about it a whole lot. So I'm not sure how many people know that we actually do it, but it's having a huge impact.
Yeah. Do you want to give people a sense of the premise? Or
Yeah.
I don't know. I tell this story when I'm sharing with folks a little bit of my interaction with some of the folks that we minister to. And I remember, I'll never forget when I met some of the refugees from Afghanistan in Delhi, India. My wife and I, Bethany and I, were there visiting a couple of years ago. And it was my first time. This will sound funny because I've gone to India a lot of times, but it was my first time like being outside of a car in Delhi. Usually fly into Delhi and then fly right back out and go up to the north where we work. I don't know if you heard, bit of a pollution problem in Delhi.
A little bit.
Yeah, which means bit of a breathing problem in Delhi. You get out of the car and like instantly you just like your lungs feel like they've just been invaded by a foreign substance, which they have. It's smog and it's bad. You can't see down the block. But anyway, we got there and our friends took me. It was appropriate for me to be able to go and sit on the steps of India's oldest mosque, and I think it was built in like the 16th century or something like that. And I got to sit on the steps outside of the mosque and just spend time speaking with 4 men who had fled from Afghanistan, and just hearing their desperation. It was. It was a terrible, tragic story, and you're going to share another specific one with us today. But it was also humorous just in the communications because they spoke a language that I didn't speak, but they also spoke a language that my friend didn't speak. But one of them spoke his language. So they would talk to each other in their language, and then the one who spoke Hindu, I guess it was, or Hindi, he would speak in Hindi to my friend, who would then turn it into English. And so it was this 3-way communication. It took a long time to have a conversation.
3-step translation.
Yeah. But yeah, we discovered that these families had fled Afghanistan after, mostly I think, just around the time that the United States was pulling out of their time in Afghanistan after about 20 years. Yeah. And they saw that things were about to get real bad. And so many of them ended up in Delhi, India, living in pretty bad conditions.
Yeah. When they flee to Delhi, the living conditions are better than it was in Afghanistan, but still definitely not ideal because these people come with their life savings, but many times that's not much.
Yeah. So. And then their ability to earn is incredibly limited. They were explaining that they were made to stay in one specific district or zone within Delhi. I mean, Delhi's a massive city, obviously, but they were made to stay in this one area. They couldn't live outside of that area. They were living in really terrible. I think they still are. Many of them living in these apartment buildings that were abandoned. No Indian family would live in them, but they were allowed to live there. Still paying rent for it, by the way.
Yeah.
But also, they couldn't work outside of this one Muslim district. Muslims are very derided in India. They're persecuted just as much as Christians are. Yeah. And they didn't have a proper certificate to work, so they were just working for cash under the table, which means they were being horribly abused. Those who live in the United States would probably resonate with that. I think many illegal immigrants here find themselves in that spot too. So they would work all day for an agreed upon wage, and then at the end of the day get a fraction of that, sort of a thing. Yeah. So yeah, our heart went out to them, and we told the Impact Nations family. That was several years ago, and we started the Afghan Refugee Training School. Yeah. So you're right. We don't get to share as much about that as we would like, just because there's only so many ways to share stories. But you've got a story about one specific graduate, I guess, from that school. Yeah.
Yes. He actually graduated last year. So this young man's name, or I don't know how young he is, maybe middle age.
Hey, careful. That's still young. Middle age is young. We're just to be clear.
Just to be, yes, exactly. Sorry. But yes, Khaled, he and his wife lived in Afghanistan. And as the conflict started to get worse, they had actually just had a baby. And when the baby was 5 months old, a little girl, he realized it was time they had to go. The conflict was too close to his home, and he just couldn't keep his family safe in Afghanistan anymore. So it was time they had to go ahead and leave. And so they fled to Delhi. And when they got there, it was a situation of one of the families, their savings were running out pretty quickly. He needed a way to work, but as you said earlier, they don't speak the language.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's a good point.
He had a
That's
skill.
incredibly limiting.
Right. He owned a food kind of truck thing.
Yeah, like a food truck sort of thing. Yeah.
Out in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
But
which I don't know, in the Philippines anyway, we used to call those stands that were at the side of the road that were serving like grilled meat and stuff. We call them street meat.
Street meat. Yeah. That's kind of what he was.
He was serving street meat.
Yeah, exactly. But when he moved to Delhi, didn't speak the language. And in Afghanistan, he had his own business. It was going well for him. But now he's in a place where it was hard for him to get employment. Because not only did he not speak the language, he didn't know how to cook their cuisine.
Oh, yeah. Because very different flavors around the world.
Right.
Yeah.
But part of our Afghan program, they get to decide if they want to learn tailoring or culinary. So tailoring school or culinary school. And so he opted to go to culinary
Of course, because
school.
he already had a head start. He understood at least how to make Afghani food. So it was just a matter of learning some new recipes, I suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he enrolled in that program and then also in the language program. So learned to speak the language, learned how to cook the food. And he was actually offered a job at one of the renowned restaurants in Delhi.
Wow.
And it's because he was able to cook both Afghan cuisine and Indian cuisine. And so he started to combine them.
Whoa. It's creating new dishes.
Right. And so...
Fusion.
Exactly. These fusion dishes. And so the owner of this restaurant was very impressed by what he was able to cook, this renowned restaurant. And so offered him a job. He started working there. He still works there. And he is known as like one of the best chefs in the restaurant now. Him and his family live in a comfortable apartment. Now they've moved out of...
Beautiful.
Yeah. So they live in a comfortable situation. And it's great too because he now mentors some of the culinary students that are in the Afghan program.
So he's giving back.
Right. Yeah.
I love that.
And his family's doing well. He's able to provide for his family. And it's really amazing because going into the program, they had basically nothing. Yeah. And then coming out of it, he has so much that he can now do. And then not only that, he wants to help others like him.
So he's staying involved not just with the Muslim community of refugees that fled Afghanistan, but that means he's also just working right alongside our partners who profess Jesus and are talking about the love of Jesus all the time.
Absolutely.
And we've had many in that program. And we have to be very careful the way we talk about it. We don't show a lot of video of this stuff and everything. But we've had many people turn to Christ because, our guys, they open every class. They start with prayer and worship and things like that. And these Muslims are eventually curious to know, who is this Jesus you keep on speaking about? How can I meet him?
Yeah. And many students report just feeling very peaceful in the beginning of class when they are doing that prayer time.
Yeah.
And that's
Which, by the way, let's not discount that. Peaceful, that's an incredibly difficult thing to come by when you're in those kind of circumstances. To find peace, that is the peace that surpasses understanding. When you can find supernatural peace in the midst of your stress, your worry, your uncertainty, to suddenly have a sense of peace in the midst of that is that makes you wonder, where is this peace coming from?
Yeah. And also the fact that this program meets practical needs.
Yeah.
So they the students and their families get fed 2 to 3 times a day, depending on.
That's amazing, because if you're hungry and your stress level is high because you're worried about where's your next meal coming from, it's a lot harder to focus on the work, especially if the work is preparing food. That's just cruel. So let's make sure that we get them fed too. So it's interesting, actually, when we first started, our very first kind of intervention or outreach to this community was providing food. And the elders of the community came to us and said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And I remember seeing videos of that, and there was great celebration as people would come. They would come down to the kind of the main floor of this apartment building. They were in 2 apartment buildings side by side, and they came down to the main floor to receive bags of groceries, rice and oil and things like that. And there was great celebration. But the elders of the community did come to us and say, "Hey, thank you. This is amazing, but it's not actually what we want. What we want is dignity. We want to be able to earn our own living, earn our own wages, so we can provide for ourselves." And so that's when this program was born, was because we said, okay, well, let's figure out how to get you working. Now, one of the things that's important to know with Impact Nations programs, it's not just about getting them the training. Jordan and I work closely with our partners, Jordan especially, to kind of think, we think about the end first and then work backwards, don't we? Like, okay, the end isn't the nice picture of students holding their certificate to say they graduated, which is a very momentous occasion. It's important to them. It's a milestone in their lives for sure. But that's not mission accomplished. Mission accomplished is what you've just described, which is he's now able to care for his family in their own nice apartment, and he's discovered that he has great value and dignity. He's being honored for his skills and his abilities and things like that. Like he found a job, a great job.
Yeah.
And so same thing here. We actually, our partners went to local employers, to an employment agency, and said, "Hey, what are the top 2 skills that you're regularly needing to hire for that kind of fit inside of the skill set that we feel we've got core competencies with?" And then basically said, if we promise to train them according to your standards, will you promise to find them work? And so that's how this sort of thing happens, because then you build reputation within your community as people who are providing excellent training. So you're producing high levels of talent. And I think they even asked, like, which dishes are some of the big restaurants and hotels looking for, that it's really important. And so this is not the first time I've heard this, where a student is recognized for their high level of skill in very specific dishes.
Yeah.
It's not an accident. We did that on purpose. Our partners, working very, very strategically. So, and that's the case with all of our vocational programs around the world. So when you give to Impact Nations, know that you're giving not just to compassionate work, which obviously we're motivated by compassion, by the love of Jesus, but also we've worked really hard to think through these strategies to make sure that it's going to have the lasting impact that we say it's going to. Yeah. So people are listening to this and they're like, I'd like to give to something like that. That sounds like you guys might know what you're doing.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Well, I would encourage you to give via the gift catalog. Actually, if you give up until the end of the year, your gift will be doubled. Whoa. We are in double donation season, which is fantastic. So there's many gifts in the gift catalog which connect to this story, one of them being a small business loan. This particular story, he's not starting his own small business, but many of the students do, especially the tailoring students. Yeah. Also providing meals, food distribution. That's a big part of how we can keep these programs going. Yeah. Because if we're not able to feed the students, they're at a higher risk of leaving the program. Yeah. So it's really nice to be able to do those sorts of things.
That's beautiful. We've got opportunities in here to, help people start their own business, but also just giving towards sustainability. To be really honest with you, I know a lot of people look through the catalog, they get inspired, but then there's so many options. They're like, I don't know where to give. One of the things that I'm often telling folks is when you give to where most needed, a lot of the times you're giving to these programs, the exact program that Jordan's describing here, because they're the ones that they're our biggest programs. They're the largest portion of our budget. And so we are regularly moving funds from where most needed to where it's most needed. Imagine that, which is getting people rescued, restored, and released into the world where they can go and flourish long term the way they were designed to do in the first place. So head to impactnations.com/catalog. You can find actually like a PDF version of this catalog there, which is cool. But also Jordan built us a beautiful website that has all of these different stories and gifts. There's some videos in there, all that stuff. So check it out, browse, have fun. If it's not too late in the year, you can actually give on behalf of a loved one if you got somebody who you don't know what to buy them. Maybe you just want to help educate somebody in a community on the other side of the world and do that in honor of your loved one. And then you can actually send them a card, e-card or print card, and just tell them all about what gift you got on their behalf.
I think just thank you to all of those that have given so far.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you told us right off the bat, like, hey, by the way, this is a story of a graduate from a year ago.
Yeah.
We track this stuff. We want to know, how are they doing? We want to know that your gifts are making a difference. And so to know a year later that, this graduate is flourishing, this stuff works.
Yeah,
Which is really cool.
It's good to know. It's making lasting change.
Yes, yeah.
Changing lives, and not only his, but also for his daughter, right?
Yeah.
She's not going to grow up
That's a really
in a
good
war
point.
zone or in extreme poverty. Now she gets to grow up.
She's going to get an education.
Right.
You're changing it. My friend Chris often says, you're changing a family tree.
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. Well, Jordan, thank you so much. Head to impactnations.com/catalog. If you like stories like this, Dad's actually down the hall right now is plotting his next podcast season. He wants to just do some stories. I think he's excited to share some similar stuff to this, and healing stories of past journeys and things like that. So stay tuned. You should be subscribed one way or the other. If by chance you just heard, they were doubling, but it's January and I didn't see this episode until now, that's because you didn't subscribe. So subscribe and then hit the little bell on YouTube anyway. Hit the little bell so you get the notifications when these types of stories come out, because you don't want to miss your opportunities as well to give, because doubling your gift right off the bat is a pretty amazing opportunity. There's lots of dollars available for that, by the way. We got $300,000 in matching gifts available. I think there's still about $95,000 as of the recording that we're doing right now available for that. So jump on that. But do subscribe to the Impact Nations podcast on YouTube. Hit the little bell so you get notifications of podcast episodes and stories of inspiration coming out, and also the podcast, of course, each and every week. Now, we have a special treat coming up for you in just a few days. Dad is going to be right back here in the studio. We got some Christmas decorations. He's going to get all settled in, and he's going to be sharing 6 small devotionals, about 8 minutes each, on the Nativity. I've actually heard some of the teaching. It's fantastic. So please be sure to subscribe and get all that. It's going to be amazing. Jordan, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you'll come back and hang out a little bit again in the future, because I know you're always getting more stories, and there's only so many places we can put them. So if you're enjoying these, by the way, tell us so. Write a comment. It's actually really helpful when you add comments in YouTube, or if you go and, I don't know what, rate the show, the podcast, in your favorite podcast app. Give us 5 stars, please, and tell your friends. Share an episode. Share a story with a friend. It really helps us get the word out, because we can't do this without you. So thank you, Impact Nations family. We love you guys, and we'll see you again soon. God bless.